Hey, gentlemen, how's it going? Happy Friday.
Hey Nick, happy Friday to you as well.
Man, we had a good session last night with those guys, eh?
Yeah, 100%. Really interesting conversation and definitely ran really long as well. So good to see that.
Yeah, I think we could have gone for hours. it's tricky in those scenarios, but it was definitely a good conversation. Chat GPT, education, kids, all that kind of stuff. It was great.
I think the cool thing is with like, especially with folks like Campfire and Moonbags, they I'm in their spaces, here and there, and I get to see that they do have wide-ranging conversations. So it was cool to see them not just keep it on one topic and allow free range conversation and be cool with that. So that's probably why it went so long as well.
Yeah, I feel like when we get Chainstack on the phone, I forget that not everybody talks infrastructure in Web3 all day long, and you kind of have to wear a bit of a different hat. But they're usually traditionally around the campfire talking about artwork and kind of visionary stuff and creativity, and I mean that's a great vibe as well. But I thought we brought a cool angle to it. Yes, I'm just going to go ahead and like and retweet this space here, and it looks like we've got Pulkit and Dazai. I think is that Tiago? If it's Tiago, give us a thumbs up, my friend, and I'll make sure I follow and subscribe to you here. And did we post this on our Twitter, on our Telegram, and our Discord page? If not, I'll go do that now, guys.
Let's go ahead and post it on our Telegram and Discord. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and for those on the call here, we're probably going to give it another 2-3 minutes, and we'll get started. So we're here. And Matt, is there a way to post like an at everyone from the Discord to invite them in?
Yeah, you should be able to hit at everyone. If you're not able to, I'll update your privileges real quick.
Yeah, or if you want to just post it out there, I don't know. Is that the same thing with Telegram as well?
With Telegram, I'm not so sure. Alrighty, we'll get kicked off here in just a moment. and got our speakers up top here. Nick, for that, you should be able to add everyone on Discord, and I do not believe you're able to on the Telegram.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll go do that in Discord. And then thanks so much for the listeners we have so far. We'll get started in a minute. Looks like we've got Jonathan, a few familiar faces. Netrunner, great to have you on board. Awesome. It's a Chainstack crowd. Kit, fantastic. Okay, so Matt, thank you so much for opening up the spaces here. This is community call number 11, I believe. And today's topic is going to be Web3 gaming and the multi-chain future. So it's a big topic, lots to unpack. With me today on the call, I've got Usman Asim and Tabasco, two of our DevRel advocates. If you boys want to say hello.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Right on. Thank you for jumping in on Friday. And as people roll in, we appreciate your attendance. Feel free to give us a like, a follow. We're going to be doing these consistently every Friday, 12 to 1, hopefully expanding this to an EMEA time zone very soon to be able to cover some other time zones, I guess. So to get started, so here we are, third week, fourth week, I guess, of 2023. Still lots happening in terms of the debacles, the FTX, the Celsiuses, a lot of stuff. Yesterday we hit the US debt ceiling. So obviously lots happening at the macro level, lots of exciting news, from the protocols. Seems to be this feeling of another small bull run coming. I'm definitely no trader here, and this is not financial advice, but things seem to be picking up pace and heating up a little bit. So it's motivating, right? From people like Chainstack, obviously being at the infrastructure side, it's great to see the momentum increase, the energy, and you can really start to feel it in the space. In terms of what we're doing day to day, it's again, I think same thing as we were doing last year. We've got our heads down, we're building, we're trying to bring better tools to the ecosystem, we're trying to get better performance, trying to be more transparent when it comes to performance on latency and RPC nodes, trying to expand on the services we offer to developers and builders, educational tools. So it's going to be a great year. We're quite excited. I think we've already accomplished a lot just in the first few weeks, and just really excited to see where the next few weeks go. So just to kick it off, I think today's agenda was supposed to be focused on gaming. And so Web3 gaming is something that obviously there's a lot of excitement about. I think there's a lot of barriers to entry that we can talk about. AAA games are making their kind of moves into the space, so you're going to see a lot more quality gaming coming out of it. This concept of onboarding the next million or billion users, I think, is going to be done across both DeFi and gaming. And gaming obviously applies to every age category. It's worldwide. It translates languages, barriers. So it's quite an exciting way to look at the future. And Web3 gaming so far has been a little difficult just based on the onboarding, based on the wallet technology that you've got to use to get involved. Some of them have been NFT gated. And it's been kind of tricky to really teach the users that this is a safe place, that they're not going to risk their funds, and they can enjoy themselves by doing it. So I guess Usman, Tabasco, just to kick it off, any thoughts from you guys on, what your outlook is for gaming in 2023? Obviously, there's some big titles that we're all expecting to roll out. There's some great news happening on all the different ecosystems, but just maybe a few minutes of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I guess I can hop in real quick. Gaming is kind of an interesting point in Web3 right now. Because Nick, like you said, gaming has the potential to really be this kind of forefront of onboarding, especially for kind of the younger audiences. But currently in the space, we're not at a point yet where gaming is super accessible. And we're kind of talking about this last night at Campfire, where really most things in Web3 are kind of hard to get past that technical barrier. And I think gaming is still, unfortunately, stuck in that zone of like, we have to go through a wallet, and a lot of wallets are hard to kind of move through. And then you have to connect that wallet to a Web3 game, and what you can actually do with the Web3 side of the game is limited. But I do think that, the use cases in terms of how we actually implement Web3 into games will change. Right now, if you look at a lot of games in Web3, people tend to look at Web3 first and then build the game around that. And I think, and I've said this in a few different places, I think we should rather build games and then where it works, add Web3 into it. The game should be fun first and foremost, and Web3 should enhance the fun of the game rather than take center stage. So I think that we'll start to see more of that, especially with a lot of stuff on like Avalanche, Usman, like Shrapnel, I know is a big one that's coming out, and I've seen a lot about them. But I think going into 2023 and 2024, the dynamic of how Web3 games actually work and the popularity that they have will change. And I do think on top of that, we'll see a lot of current Web 2 games start to implement Web 3 in places like collectibles and stuff like that, where it makes sense to. But we'll see. I do think that, like you said, Nick, if we can nail down gaming, it is one of the first and most important places to go in terms of finding that initial mainstream audience.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Tabasco. And I think that, we were in the campfire space yesterday talking about some of the major use cases of blockchain technology and just where we could really see it kind of shine. And I think gaming is one of those spaces where we could really see things take off once, like you said, a lot of the issues that are within the space are abstracted away, like wallet creation and things like that. And you've seen a lot of really great traction within the past couple of months within all the different ecosystems of gaming kind of starting to rear its head as the main or one of the main, sub industries within the entire blockchain space. So you're starting to see major partnerships with pre-established games such as like Fide Chess kind of coming onto Avalanche and starting to show themselves as what they can utilize blockchain for. And then like you mentioned, Tabasco, AAA games like Shrapnel who are already building their game out, from the gaming perspective, but then also utilizing full on-chain technologies to be able to really enhance that ecosystem. From what I know about Shrapnel, it seems like every single aspect of their game is going to be on-chain, where now you can really have a full in-game ecosystem where users can create skins, create the skins that you wear as your user, your gun skin, you know, create them, sell them, resell them, have them on different marketplaces, third-party marketplaces to really create this full in-game economy. And, as we all know, in the traditional gaming world, without even the blockchain ownership aspect, some game skins can really go for absurd amounts of money. Like I remember seeing, I think it was, I forget the exact name of the game, but it was like a first person shooter that everyone gets to play. But the skins of those knives that go for like anywhere from tens of thousands of dollars to even one that went for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think that it's definitely a space where we could start to see a lot of traction.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Just as you guys were going through, I was pulling up some research here from some most iconic brands in gaming today. So they were talking about Tezos, I guess a while back, partnered with Ubisoft back in 2021. So that I haven't heard a ton of noise about that lately. But you can see some new stuff like Square Enix, however you say it. They're talking about some big investments in 2023, some bold claims being made. We see Microsoft also getting involved. They talked about an NFT solution accelerator, Web3 first developer tools and content, Xbox Enterprise blockchain platform, which is kind of wild. So I think you're probably going to see some momentum from the big players this year. Valve is mentioning that they've got a lot coming as well. Epic Games. So obviously those are five big studios and brands. Our colleague Max, you can follow him on Twitter, Big Dog Max. He does a ton in terms of the gaming industry in the space. He's working with a lot of great projects across the ecosystems today. A lot of them on Avalanche subnets. Some talking about Polygon Edge, different networks that they're talking about for these app chains to be able to get higher throughput, lower transaction fees, and a more friendly user experience. I think from an outside perspective, just looking at the friction that can be caused with onboarding people to games. Number one, there's on and off ramps. So how do you get people to the game, having money in game? Do you gate it with an NFT? Then people kind of need to figure out if they want to invest in an NFT, how they feel about the project versus just giving blatant access to the game. What I think the way to do it is going to be a bit more of a steady approach. You're going to target some of the Web3 individuals that are already hardcore into gaming. They manage their own wallets. They've got their ledger. They know how to navigate their own security. But for the general population, teaching them to go download a wallet, let's say it's Core Wallet or Phantom or MetaMask, it's not the hardest thing to learn, but it's still definitely, I think, a big barrier to entry. And then once they're in game, just the amount of transactions and signing that has to happen every single time. They've got to verify it's the right addresses. They've got to check to make sure that it's the right wallet, the right signature. So it's still a bit clunky. I don't want to be offensive and rude here. I believe in wallet technology, but so far it's been a little tricky, even for somebody that lives in the space, just making sure that you're doing all the check mark boxes and you're covering all your bases. So I think there's some huge improvements that can be done there. We had a community spaces call, I think, a few weeks ago with Argent. They're more of a Starknet and StarkX ecosystem, but they were talking about session keys and limits so that you can kind of pre-authorize, I guess, a number of transactions or a dollar figure or a session while you're playing. And that way there's a little bit less interaction and friction in terms of the kind of the day-to-day operations of it. So I think that's a big component. Guys, I don't know if you have any comments on, the onboarding experience. I think it all starts from either the wallet or from the gaming application. I think they can do a good job at educating people, putting out wizards, YouTube videos, documentation. There's the other component of trust, right? There's so much hacks and scams being made in the space. It's really hard to figure out even an official website if it is official. I come from the cybersecurity space, and I believe very strongly in what's called SSL certificates. In the past, when I used to sell SSL, it was pretty straightforward and easy to figure out who owned a website. You'd go click on the padlock, the HTTPS, you'd see that it was to an organization. I could go verify the organization owned the company, and it was a legit website. Nowadays, not only SSL certificate technology has changed in terms of the rules, but it's really hard to figure out if you're actually on an official site, if you're not, if you're clicking a scam or you're getting rugged. So I think there's a lot of fear and scrutiny and security that needs to get better just for the overall user experience. So guys, I don't know what your thoughts are there, but Usman, go ahead.
Yeah, 100%, Nick. I completely agree with you. And I know Tabasco also echoed this sentiment that the onboarding and offboarding experience within the entire industry as a vacuum is kind of sucky right now, especially in the gaming space where it's going to be needed to be almost seamless. I just wanted to highlight a few projects that I really feel are doing a lot of great work to kind of solve this issue and kind of acting as pioneers in the space to really make the onboarding process easier. One of them is Biconomy. I'm not too sure how familiar everyone here is with Biconomy, but essentially what they do is they abstract away the need for the ability to sign transactions when you're, using a blockchain application. So when you click that sign, when you click a button that utilizes some blockchain functionality on a website, like you're buying an NFT, and then your MetaMask pops up, it completely abstracts away the need to do that, and kind of makes all those things kind of happen in the background using account abstraction and a lot of other really cool mechanisms that they have in place. And so a lot of people have been implementing Biconomy into their applications recently to kind of improve their UX and just create a better overall user experience for not only just the developers who are building, but also users who are building on that platform as well. And then another great project is Peas, which is a Chainstack partner, which is making it really easy to have sign in and sign on in a lot of different applications going on currently as well. I spoke with Parker and Armand not too long ago, and these guys are really, really focused on just making it easier to onboard into into the Web3 ecosystem, really have it really easy to spin up a wallet without even know you're spinning up a wallet. And I think that's going to be key when we start moving away from these terms like wallet and things like that for the everyday user who can sign in with their email, sign in with their social media account, and have all these mechanisms in place without even know they're using them.
Right. I think that ultimately we're at a point where the biggest barrier to entry currently, sorry, is wallet technology. Kind of like Usman was saying a little bit, that the first thing a new user interacts with is a wallet. And if that wallet is hard to use, and like right now, for example, if you want to go create a wallet, say a MetaMask wallet, right? You create it, you have a seed phrase, you have to write down this, 12, 24 word phrase on a piece of paper and go put it in your safe. And then you have this account, and you have to learn what is a public key, what is like this private key thing, like transaction ID is gas. I mean, it's super confusing. And this fundamental problem of actually using Web3 and how it's kind of raw and you're directly interacting with the blockchain in a way where it's kind of confusing for most people. That needs to be fundamentally changed into something that is a little bit easier to use, right? It would be like I don't know, like using like a Web2 payment system, right? Like Web2 payment systems have a ton of abstractions to make it easier for the normal user to use it without having to kind of go through this technical process. And Web3 doesn't have that yet, mostly because of the reliance on self custody. So typically, what we've seen within this space is a prioritization of self custody over user experience, meaning most wallets would rather give people as much control as possible rather than giving them as much kind of comfort. So I do think the number one thing that we need right now in terms of whether it's gaming or whether it's DeFi or any other vertical in terms of onboarding is to nail down the wallet creation process and the wallet utilization process in a way that feels familiar, and simple to use for non-technical individuals.
Yeah, I hear you. And I mean, in terms of wallets, do you have any that you recommend? I mean, obviously, people are quite familiar with MetaMask it could use a bit of a trimmed down light version, to be honest, just based on what I believe, at least from a beginner user's perspective. Some of the other wallets are a little bit more user friendly. You know, a lot of them are trying to go multi chain. Personally, I being in Canada, sometimes it's a bit of a pain, and you guys in the US and in Europe and different places in the world, not every platform is available internationally. And I find that, you know, the Web3 projects, the gaming projects, probably the bigger studios will be clear about what the rules of engagement are. A lot of the smaller projects, you don't know until you try. And, you know, same thing for me day to day, playing around with different exchanges, you know, Coinbase, Binance, this and that, right? At least every country has their own rules. Sometimes every province or state has their own rules as well. So it can be very tricky to navigate. And there's no one central place. If you think about, like, let's say PlayStation or Xbox, there's only two consoles. You know, you've got your credit card set up. It's pretty traditional. You navigate it, you log in, you click a button, you go. Now it's a little bit different. And I was just looking at some statistics. Do you guys think, just looking at the stats, it looks like more and more users obviously are going mobile. That seems to be a 60% uptick in terms of new users coming on board versus like 19 or 20% on PC and on game consoles. How do you guys feel the Web3 experience pushes towards mobile more? And, you know, how do you guys feel about this concept of people sort of going from a console on a TV to essentially holding a phone in their pockets and in their hands? And like I said, it's a different user experience overall. The screen's smaller, you know, the bandwidth is different. You're kind of moving around doing things different places. So how do you guys feel about that mobile experience really kind of taking over?
I guess I can kind of hop in real quick. I think that so mobile, first of all, is popular mostly because it's cheap and it's accessible. So, you know, if you can go get a $200 phone that's capable of running most applications versus a $1,000 computer or a $500 console or whatever it may be, um, it makes it much easier for the majority of people to start using Web3 or start playing video games or whatever it may be, when you have such a low like level of entry in the tech space. I do think that we're getting better as an industry in kind of directing our resources towards mobile audiences. I don't think that we're there yet at all. So like my main experience with mobile with Web3 is MetaMask, right? So the MetaMask app, it works most of the time. It's okay. But ultimately, Web3 is made ground up for desktop at the moment, for using it with browser extensions and with desktop applications. And there's very few Web3 applications that are built for mobile. Like maybe Trust Wallet is one of the few ones that are. And I know Nick, you're pretty familiar with Trust Wallet and the team over there, but right now, you know, we're struggling to reach that audience effectively, and I do think that that'll be a big component of it, especially in the gaming space, is to take advantage of that and ensure that we're creating our infrastructure and our wallets in a way, and just these fundamental processes of Web3 that is user friendly to mobile users. Because right now, it really isn't in most cases. Like I think Trust Wallet is probably one of the few wallet applications that are.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, the mobile experience, I think, kind of connects quite well, right? You know, you use the mobile to do your wallets. That's where most of things live. I mean, some people are also doing it on PC, but I personally feel that most of my day-to-day Web3 activities are done via the mobile phone. So it's kind of interesting. And then what about if we take a stance at security? So, I mean, I know Tabasco, you and I talk about this once in a while. So the cool thing is, without plugging Chainstack here, but we do offer a free developer tier, which gets you access to a free RPC node, for example, right? And for personal use, the 3 million a month that we include is definitely above and beyond probably what you'll need. And so can you walk somebody through the process, let's say on MetaMask, to plug in their Chainstack RPC? And can you talk to me in like 2 or 3 minutes, just quickly, why somebody would want to do that? Is it more secure? Is it more private? Is it more performance oriented? You know, what's the benefit of having a little bit more control over your RPC endpoint? If you can dive into that a bit.
Yeah, sure. So having your own personal RPC endpoint, especially from an organization like Chainstack, is really important. So the analogy that I typically like to use is imagine your public RPC endpoint, right? Like the public Polygon endpoint or the public Harmony endpoint. You know, usually you'll be using that in your MetaMask. But think of that as kind of like a public internet connection. Like you walk into Starbucks and you use their Wi-Fi. Public RPCs are kind of like the same thing, right? You're using the same RPC as 3,000 other people are, which means that latencies might not be great, reliability might not be great, and so on. So when you go to Chainstack, what you can do is you can sign up for the developer plan, which gives you 3 million free monthly requests. And it gives you a node on any of our networks. And you can choose the location of that node. It's pretty customizable even on the free plan. So let's say you go to the Chainstack website, sign up for the developer plan, and you spin up a Harmony node, for example. Once you do that, you can scroll down and it'll give you an RPC URL. You can plug that into your MetaMask. And by doing so, you've just switched from what was before kind of like a public Wi-Fi connection to now your own personal home Wi-Fi connection is kind of like the analogy I like to use. It'll be faster is the biggest thing. Depending on where you get the node, where you deploy the node in terms of location, the latency will be far better. And most importantly, it'll be more reliable. So I can give an example. My personal application that I built almost 2 years ago now, Amity DeFi. I haven't updated it in a long time, but I think I plugged 3 or 4 Chainstack endpoints into that application um, maybe 6 months ago, and I haven't touched the code. I haven't touched the infrastructure since then. And it's been constantly up, like 99.99% uptime or something like that. I haven't even had to think about it. So you'll get that same experience with MetaMask, and that you can kind of forget about RPCs as a whole. You'll have a fast, reliable RPC that you can use for free. And like I said, it's basically like your own personal internet connection, which I think is huge. I personally use Chainstack RPCs for the majority of my MetaMask networks, and it just makes everything so much better.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, I guess on the topic of infrastructure, I know Pulkit's on the call here, and just another shameless plug here, but Chainstack just released our new gaming landing page on chainstack.com under products, and it's chainstack.com/gaming. And so just reading some of the cool stuff that we're doing in this space, right? So the tagline is infinitely scalable infrastructure, custom built for Web3 games. So I guess if we want to get into a little bit of it, what do we feel that Chainstack is doing to help, builders from the small games, based on community all the way to some of the AAA studios? I guess I see it in terms of some of the platforms that we're putting out. So the different subscription tiers, IPFS storage, our different NFT APIs, different marketplace integrations like Borealis and some of the SDKs that are out there. And then just the scalability through this concept of like Avalanche subnets, Polygon supernets, BNB sidechains, and even subgraphs for data indexing. So I think, I went through that success recipe. But Tabasco or Usman, do you guys have any thoughts on essentially standing behind what Chainstack is doing here for the gaming community?
Yeah, I think the emphasis that we've placed on it as a company ourselves has been really key. We're really focusing a lot on different things, like you just mentioned, the landing page. We have Max, Big Dog Max, who's out there really putting in work within the industry on a day-to-day basis, where he's connecting with top partners, top companies, top games who are building, and then all the technologies that we're pushing out, like you just mentioned, Nick. I It's going to be key even going forward for us to kind of partner with some of these other companies that increase the onboarding experience as they start to come out, while with releasing new APIs and with releasing new potential wallet as a service applications. Who knows, what we're able to do down the line. But I think that anything that we can do to be able to increase the ability to make it easier for developers to build, as we're already doing, is going to increase the overall gaming environment as a whole as well. Um, I'm really excited to see, specifically on the Avalanche subnet side, what is going to be done within the next couple of months, especially with some of the games that we're working with personally. Shrapnel is going to be releasing in the next couple of months. I know they have a test net coming out soon, and that's powered by Chainstack. That's going to be really exciting to see how their game is be able to run on top of our infrastructure, and how, scalable it really is, and how many transactions it's really able to handle, because that's going to be a great first stress test for not only them but also us as a network, to be able to see how we're able to support such a large scale, AAA game as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's awesome. And I didn't want to pivot too quickly here, but I guess, concept of subnets and supernets and these app chains. So for the folks that are kind of listening to this, there was one thing to learn about, which was RPCs and choosing your favorite network, whether it's Avalanche, Solana, Polygon, Binance, you name it, right? Those are kind of some of the bigger chains, or near, and then, there's a few other options. But this new advent of these app chains, which is these semi-private, customizable blockchains, something like what you're saying Shrapnel is doing. I know there's been a lot of news in the last 2 weeks in terms of Amazon partnering with Avalanche. That's fantastic news for the industry. People are kind of diving into the feedback of that, trying to make sense of what that actually means long term. I've spoken very closely with the Eva Labs teams. They're super excited about the partnership. They really feel that this new subnet concept, and then cross subnet and cross app chain messaging, is going to be big. And I think that rolls into our next topic around multi chain. But just to close off on the subnet concept, and why would somebody like Shrapnel want to be on a subnet, Usman? I know there's a few key technical reasons, but do you want to give us a bit of an overview as to why somebody would not launch on like Avalanche C chain or P chain, and they'd want to go with something on a subnet?
Yeah, sure, of course. So I think there's a few different reasons why they would want to build on a subnet specifically. To start off right away, they get the instant finality that is given by Avalanche's consensus mechanism that they would have been able to get on the C chain itself. But when we discussed earlier about Shrapnel and all the different utilizations of blockchain that they're going to be doing, on a base level, most of their transactions in the game are going to be on chain. Now, what that means is that they're likely going to have, depending on the user base that they have, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of transactions daily. Um, in terms of blockchain transactions that are just coming from one side of their game. Now, what that's going to do if they were to launch on the C chain would not only increase gas transactions for each one of those specific transactions on their game, but also the entire network as a whole. So for them to be able to say that, hey, we are going to retract all of that traffic and put it onto one specific app chain solution is huge. And now they're able to not having to worry about increased gas. They're able to control that gas in a much more sustainable way, and if they're using something like Biconomy, what I mentioned earlier in the background, to be able to abstract that away from the user and they're absorbing those costs, it'll be at a much lower cost to them than it would be if it was on the seed chain. Now, what's another really cool thing that I don't know that hasn't really been explored yet? I know they're keeping it kind of hush hush what's really going on in the background, but if they choose to go the direction of having, a custom virtual machine, or if they choose to go in the direction of having inter-subnet communication with a bunch of different subnets where you can transfer, their skins or assets, whatever the case is, between multiple different subnets, they're really going to be able to take off in ways that they would not be able to if they were launching on a layer one on a base layer or on the C chain on Avalanche. So giving them basically the keys to do whatever they want with their game from the ground up, being powered by the fastest consensus mechanism out there right now is really powerful for them, and they can look at that and see so much value. So I can definitely see why they would want to build on a subnet. I'm really excited to see what specific configurations in terms of customizability they have working in the background right now.
Yeah, and I think you said something that's super key, and I heard that said yesterday was this concept of like a chain of chains and intercommunication. So think of it as, let's say you're playing a game like, let's say it's Fortnite, for example, right? You've got all these skins on there, you've put some money in, you've grinded, you've earned your keep. Now you want to maybe move them from, let's say, Fortnite, and I mean, maybe that's not the best example of a platform. Let's say from PS5 to Xbox, right? You can transition all your assets, your in-game assets across. And I think that's kind of the recipe that's being built out with this subnet concept and some of the new technologies coming out around multi-chain and cross-chain messaging is this ability for you to grind, enjoy your game, enjoy the time you've put into it, earn your rewards, maybe buy some rewards, trade, and then at the end of the day is bring those with you. So I was having a conversation with somebody the other day talking about over the last, let's say, 10 years, how much money they've dumped into gaming and how they have absolutely nothing to show for it other than a few trophies that are held on the PlayStation, right? There's no, there's no monetary value. There's no token ownership. And that's a lot of heart, blood, sweat, and tears that went into that, right? A lot of funds and money. And so I think that that's part of the excitement of this new revolution of blockchain and Web3 gaming is you can now, put in the work, own your assets, and then maybe make some money doing it, or at least keep what you spent and then convert it or translate it or transfer it, and then keep that momentum rolling. So I think that's a whole new economy where traditionally all that money would have gone to the developers, the builders, the credit card processors, the actual game console makers. Now, a lot of that can go back to the user. So it's just really cool to see this economy that's going to get generated based on people actually being able to own and earn what they've done themselves and then, make some money or keep some ownership around it and have some pride around what they're doing there. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that in terms of this whole economy of in-game skins and weapons and all the different things that are going to be involved in NFTs. But to me, that's a big exciting part of this.
Yeah, 100% Nick. I look back at my Steam, time spent on certain games from the past couple of years, and it's kind of absurd how much time I spend on certain games back in the day. And to be able to say that I have literally almost nothing to show for it is kind of depressing to me when I look back and say, man, I have 1,000+ hours spent on between two different games, and in reality, I made no financial monetary gain from it. I have no real rewards or trophies that I can say that, hey, this is something that I can go and potentially resell one day and gain monetary incentive from. It kind of sucks. And seeing this new economy being built in the background using blockchain and what games like we mentioned Shrapnel are doing, or what, potentially Fide Chess might be able to do down the line, is really exciting, because then for someone like myself who looks back or and says, man, I really did waste a lot of time playing these games, um, we'll be able to look back and say, well, that time really wasn't wasted, because now potentially you could be able to resell whatever, skins or trophies or games that you were able to accumulate during that time period, or potentially even just be paid for the time spent. So I think exciting times ahead in the gaming industry.
Yeah, and it was kind of like you were saying earlier about you're talking about CS:GO and the knife and skin market on that game. That's the type of thing that is a Web3 use case, right? So, like for example, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I had collected a ton of CS:GO skins and stuff. I had like knives, and I had like all these rare weapon skins and stuff. I probably had, I don't know, $600 in skins. Um, and you can sell it on the market, and you can kind of like, there's like its own market, but again, it's not like you don't actually own this stuff, right? So like the knife that I have, I can use it in game, but it shows in my inventory. You don't actually own it. You own like some representation of it. So something like that, like real economies of skins, stuff like this, untethered from like this huge organization of like Valve. And if CS:GO shuts down, or if Steam shuts down and goes down, then I lose all my assets, and I mean that's a lot of money, right? So being able to translate that into something where like those skins that I owned, that if I could actually own them, then I might still own them today. I might have not sold them. The value that you get out of blockchain technology in this case, with economies like this where you can literally own these digital assets, it's invaluable, and it'll completely change the way that these economies work, right? And CS:GO isn't the only game like this. There's a ton of games that rely on this as a profit method. They take royalties off of marketplace sales and stuff like that, and that's how they make money, right? And I think a lot of blockchain games are kind of going in that direction. But CS:GO, like you mentioned earlier, is a really good example of an effective in-game economy that could use Web3.
Yeah, and I mean, on that topic, again, you talk about, cross chain and having ownership. I guess, can we dive into that a little bit? The difference is, if I understand it in my layman's view here, is because this is blockchain based and it's all sort of, kept on these ledgers, and Usman and Ethan have a wallet address or an ID where all these things are stored. Technically speaking, it doesn't really matter if a game goes down, or if a game changes chains or platforms. Those assets are essentially infinitely recorded and immutable on the blockchain, right? So I think that's a big advantage here, is the fact that it translates across sort of any game, any application, comparably to, let's say console work today on PS5 or Xbox. Like, I can barely even play with my friend. We're in 2023 and he's on Xbox, I'm on PS5, and we can rarely play together on games, which just sounds mental when it's all online and it's all digital. So do you see a lot more of that happening in this Web3 ecosystem? And am I right on my assumption that, that's kind of part of the value, is everything is on chain to some extent? And whatever happens with the game itself, you could potentially, as long as there's a market for it and there's liquidity around it, you could essentially trade those assets infinitely into the future, without really needing them to be alive. Obviously, the usability goes down, but an ideal world would be where you can use a skin from one game and translate that to another game, which is like, I think there's a lot of people that are looking at that option. But full translatability between what you've got on Avalanche into another chain, or from one subnet game to a next. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, I mean, multi-chain as a topic is interesting, because there's kind of two directions that Web3 can go into as an industry, right? We can either kind of go the Web2 route, and like two or three blockchains come out on top, within the next 5 years, and those are the ones that you use, and they're all isolated from each other, kind of like the big search engines like Google and Bing and Yahoo, right? You just choose one, you use it. Or we'll kind of go in this more multi-chain direction. Where in 5 years we'll still have 15 different blockchains, but they're all, ideally they would all be like interoperable with each other, right? So like you said, like you have an asset on Polygon, you want to go use it on an Avalanche game, like you'd be able to do that. Ideally, it's not super practical to do that yet. But I think I personally, that's a future that I want to see, rather than a future where there's just a few major blockchains you can kind of switch between. But kind of, we've seen applications and wallets really push multi-chain, right? So we've seen, first of all, projects, DGods and Magic Eden, right? These guys have gone from being isolated on Solana to now being cross-chain across EVM chains and Polygon and Ethereum. And the reason of that is, number one, to capture other user bases, but also to, add to this kind of interoperable nature of Web3. And to kind of get rid of the sentiment that like every chain has to compete with each other and like they all need to like be super distinct, when they don't have to, right? These chains can, and the applications on the chains, they can work together and it doesn't have to be competitive. Another really great example of this I did want to touch on briefly today was Phantom Wallet. If you guys are familiar with Phantom, they have recently released a beta that expands Phantom across Solana into Polygon and Ethereum. And the reason I bring it up is because I think Phantom's implementation of multi-chain usage is really interesting, and it's something that I wish MetaMask would do. So on Phantom, right, you have Solana, Polygon, and Ethereum with their beta. And what you can do is, for example, if you want to go trade on 1inch or on QuickSwap or Uniswap or something like that, instead of having to go into your MetaMask and click the drop down and switch to Polygon or switch to Avalanche or whatever it may be, Phantom just has it all in one, right? So you click quick swap and you want to swap on Polygon and it's all instant. You don't have to actually switch any networks. So the way Phantom's formatted it, basically you have 3 networks in one wallet that you don't need to switch between, right? They all work kind of asynchronously. And it's really exciting the way that they formatted it. And I think that's kind of the direction that we need to go in, is increasing this level of interoperability and making chains less competitive and kind of creating these pathways between, like I said, like you get some skin or some achievement on an Avalanche game, and then you can go use that skin on a Polygon game, right? That's the ideal situation. I think that's what we need to move towards.
Yeah, it's really awesome. So just to go back on what you mentioned there, so the difference with this new Phantom Wallet update, and I saw some of the beta stuff the other day, is as opposed to kind of a traditional MetaMask where you have to switch networks, this one here allows you to kind of be in all 3 networks at once. Is that sort of an easy definition of it?
Yeah, pretty much. If you use the beta, which I'm not sure how many people have access to right now, but if you go to 1inch, for example, I was using it this morning. With 1inch, you can switch between Polygon and Ethereum, right? And with MetaMask, if you want to click on Polygon, a pop-up on MetaMask shows up and says, "Do you want to switch to Polygon?" You have to switch your RPC, whatever, and then it switches. With 1inch, you just click Polygon and instantly you're in there, just within the 1inch application. So you're basically within Phantom. You're connected to 3 networks at once that you can very quickly switch between, depending on the application that you're on.
It's really cool. That's definitely a step in the right direction. And I mean, as we go here, I just wanted to take a quick pause. If anybody in the audience has any questions, any comments, feedback, feel free to lift your hand. We'll bring you up. Always love to have an interactive conversation. Nice. Okay, so then let's keep going down this multi-chain path. So, without offending anybody, Chainstack to some extent is chain agnostic. We try to be chain agnostic. We have our favorites, as I like to say, but for example, I know Tabasco, right? So you run some of the Solana, the Ethereum communities, Harmony communities. Can you tell us a bit of, maybe some alpha or what you see in the marketplace in terms of what's developing in the gaming space across those chains? Anything really exciting that we should be aware of?
The gaming space across. So right now I'm doing Harmony Fuse, Ethereum, and Solana. And right now I do think gaming is pretty isolated to things like Polygon and Avalanche, but from my perspective on the Solana side, I've seen a lot of games pop up, and we actually had some spaces with a few of them. Where the big thing with Solana gaming that kind of differentiates itself between Avalanche and Polygon is the performance, right? And we kind of talked about this briefly on one of our previous spaces. The interesting thing about Solana is that the TPS and the transaction fees are low, and it's an incredibly fast and unique chain because of that. Which means that applications, whether it's DeFi or gaming, can be built on Solana that can't be built anywhere else. So games like to take advantage of that. and create functionalities and unique features that take advantage of Solana's speed and low transaction fees and whatnot. And I think Solana is a really great platform to build games off of, especially when we're talking about this kind of like accessibility and onboarding path. Um, if you play a game on Ethereum, for example, and you're a brand new user and you want to sign a contract and start a mission or something like that, right? The fees on Ethereum, even now after Ethereum 2.0, might be multiple dollars to sign a contract like that. And for a new user that wants to start blockchain gaming, that's just not sustainable, right? Nobody's going to pay a few dollars every time they want to interact with something. Um, on top of that, you have to wait, maybe 30 seconds, a minute before that transaction goes through. Versus something like Solana, where you pay virtually zero in fees for every interaction and contract that you sign, and it's instant, right? So this is a huge game changer for things like games where this quick and cheap interaction is absolutely necessary to create a good user experience. And I think Solana is a really fantastic example of a good platform to build that on, and games that are taking advantage of that good platform to make unique features and whatnot.
Yeah, that's really cool. So as much as we say a lot of this is multi-chain, each chain still has their own kind of upside and downside and pros and cons. It's interesting that we haven't seen, or I guess maybe I'm just not in the loop here, but is there any big AAA studio titles that are coming out in Solana that you think we should be aware of, Ethan, for this year?
There's not a ton of massive ones. So like the biggest one that we had a space with, myself and Max, a few months ago was Open Era, and I recommend checking them out. These guys are really cool. They do a few different games, and they have their own wallet and this different stuff. They're a fantastic organization, and they're building a huge RPG game on Solana, and just people like that. But, most games on Solana are from these independent studios like Open Era, where it's like 15, 20 people, and they're all working on this game and stuff like that. In terms of AAA stuff, there's not a ton on Solana. Like I said, the biggest games right now, from my point of view, are building on Avalanche and Polygon. But there are some really fantastic and exciting games being built on Solana, just maybe not as directly mainstream oriented.
And why do you think that is? I mean, is it the marketing? Is it the technology, these subnets, these supernets that had really, like, I guess, I don't know if you can put your finger on it, and obviously it's a hard decision to make, but why do you think that is?
I think that really for AAA studios or AAA, facing games, supernets and subnets are key for the success of a lot of these guys. So like we were talking about Shrapnel earlier, I think this is a great example. Where these games need like reliability, supernets and subnets can give that to them, where Solana isn't necessarily known for their reliability, right? They're fast and they're cheap, but they aren't the most reliable in the space. So ideally, if you can get fast, cheap, and reliable on like your own isolated chain, like a subnet or a supernet, that's better, and that's better for a use case like this. So I do think that right now, most of the large games I've seen are taking advantage of that technology.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Anything else happening? I guess Fuse is more DeFi related. Harmony, I mean, Harmony, if you want to spend a few seconds on that, they had the big bridge hack. I mean, we're talking many months ago. You were part of that sort of, spicy community trying to stick it to the man and get this thing figured out. How did, anything coming on to Harmony? I guess that's maybe not a chain that people speak too much about these days.
Yeah, Harmony was before the hack. Harmony was the gaming ecosystem. That's how they formatted themselves, right? So we had DFK on Harmony, which was for a long time the biggest. And someone said that he had to hop off another call, but we can keep going. For a long time, DFK was the biggest blockchain game, right? That was what a blockchain game needed to be. So Harmony for a long time, and they had Cosmic Universe and these just huge ecosystem of games, right? When a game wanted to build, Harmony was one of their first choices. Um, but after the hack, that changed, right? And we saw DFK, they moved, Cosmic Universe moved, Oneverse moved. So most of these really incredible games that we're building on Harmony are now building on Polygon or on Clayton or on supernets and subnets. So Harmony is no longer really a place where there's a lot of games or where there's a lot of activity in general. Um, but maybe in the future it'll be another hub for gaming. But for now, most of the games that were on Harmony that were thriving on Harmony are actually now thriving on subnets and supernets.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame. I was definitely a Harmony fan, and I mean, I remember a few months ago that was all we could talk about. Right, Tabasco was what was happening there, and then after that hack, and I know they've made some good progress getting Layer Zero back on board to build a bridge. like from your perspective, is it ready to rock now at this point? It's just more trying to get the people back, or is there still some technological gaps that you think are in the way?
I think that in terms of technology, Harmony is still super strong. I mean, they have this fast 2-second finality, these incredibly low fees, this kind of shard functionality that they've been focusing on, and now they have the bridge back up with layer 0. If anybody saw, I think it was maybe last week and a half ago, something like that. Binance recovered, it was like $3 million in bridge hack funds, which is great. So Harmony's going in a good direction right now, but unfortunately, they've lost their position as a leader in terms of incentive for developers to build in the platform. So before, Harmony was popular because they had things like DFK, and people were like, well, DFK is building on Harmony, it's fast and it's cheap and it's reliable, and they have like this great bridging technology and stuff like that. But then it gets hacked, and number one, they lose a lot of trust within the ecosystem, and other protocols quickly take Harmony's place as the number one choice for building these different applications. So as a developer, when you're trying to choose what chain do I want to build on, and you can say, well, do I want to build on the chain that got hacked for $100 million and that nobody's building on anymore? Or do I want to go build on an Avalanche Avalanche subnet or a Polygon supernet? Or do I want to go build on Solana and, access their huge developer ecosystem or something like that? The choice usually won't be Harmony, unfortunately, because of what happened. But I do hope that they'll kind of find their place in the ecosystem again and hopefully return to their position as an industry leader. It's just that, unfortunately, they're not there just yet.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, we've got I think Landslide just joined us. So thanks again for your attendance, my friend. Always a pleasure to hear your thoughts. So if you do want to have a few comments, oh, he ran away. That's okay. No, yeah. So I mean, that's great to hear. I mean, it's a shame, honestly, because I was a big fan of the Harmony ecosystem, just like you, Tabasco. I know you've spent a lot of time building and building a brand for yourself in there. These bridge hacks, right? I know we spent a few minutes on it. There's this topic of security. I don't know if anybody follows NFT God. I guess he's one of these NFT influencers that essentially had most of his portfolio stolen about a weekend or two ago. And it just goes to show you, like, hacks are there. I think I'm taking my own time now to do what's called some personal hygiene around set different wallets, different seed phrases, things where I've stored things. It's cool to see this new space coming up in crypto Twitter, at least that I'm noticing, is the goals around security. People learning how to navigate hardware wallets, having 2 or 3 hardware wallets, understanding that they can have multiple wallets per seed phrase, kind of having some personal hygiene around seed phrase management. So it's really cool. I think those are some gaps that definitely the community needs to break down and talk about more openly. Security, for some reason, even myself coming from a security background, is something that just frustrates me. It's like, man, why do I still have to deal with this myself? Why can't they figure it out for me? I think at the end of the day, Web3 is one of those things where nobody's going to do it for you, at least just yet. You're sort of responsible for your own destiny and your own mistakes, and there's not very much that you can do to recover funds. I know there's new technology coming out, and there's social wallets and the ability to go into the mempool and kind of try to front run your own attacker and all these really cool techniques to try to recover funds. I actually think, just based on going through what happens at FTX and some of these recoveries, is as companies start getting better at recovering funds, as crazy as that sounds in blockchain, I think you'll help break down some of the silos and make things more approachable for people getting on board, knowing that there's somebody there, there's Big Brother out there to give you a hand if you do get hacked. But can you talk about this bridge quickly here, Tabasco? So, I mean, did you lose money? I mean, maybe that's a private question, but did a lot of people lose money in terms of vendor or users? Is it more the Harmony community, like the foundation, that lost money in this hack? How did this really impact individual users?
So there was, on my end, there wasn't too much money lost. It was more in the price impact that the hack had on the Harmony tokens that I hold. I still hold a few thousand Harmony. I just have it staked. But in terms of the financial impact on the community, it was pretty detrimental. It was huge, the amount of money that people lost, and it was really unfortunate to see. And they didn't lose it directly of the bridge funds themselves. It was more of the resulting lack of backing of stablecoins after the bridge hack. So that $100 million was being used as liquidity for these bridge stablecoins. So, for example, Harmony didn't have any native stablecoins at the time, right? They had USDC and USDT and BUSD. These were bridged tokens. So these came from Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain. When this $100 million was hacked, while that money wasn't directly taken from anybody except really the Harmony Foundation, that was used as liquidity to back the pegging of these different stablecoins. So as soon as $100 million was gone, USDC, it fell through the floor and it was no longer a dollar. USDT was no longer a dollar. BUSD was no longer a dollar. All of the stablecoins and pegged bridged assets within the ecosystem, they fell and they lost their value. And this means that any treasuries, right? So you have like your game or your DeFi project that was holding, 60% of their treasury in one USDC, it was wiped out overnight, right? They lost thousands and thousands of dollars from that. Individuals that were holding one USDC, they lost all of that money because the value of that token fell. So that was really the largest impact from the bridge, and it was unfortunate to see that happen because the reason the bridge was hacked in the first place was ultimately negligence, and that the entire bridge and the funds in that bridge was secured out of a 2 out of 4 multi-sig, which means a multi-signature wallet that just needed half of the 4 signatures to sign it for $100 million. Which was unfortunate to see something with such little security holding that much money. And it backfired, of course, right? Everybody lost their treasury funds and people lost huge swaths of savings and so on, all because of a lack of security. So I think, Nick, like you said, security and being responsible for your own funds is important, but having protocols and organizations like Harmony take some responsibility and really focus on security for their applications like that is really important. And if we don't see it on a large scale going into the future, then we'll see more Harmony bridge hacks happen. And I hope that we don't.
Yeah, I hear you. And I always come from a business side where, who's the onus on? At this point in Web3, it's entirely on the user. And I guess that's kind of the luxury, and that's the system when it comes down to it, is you want to be unbanked, at least to some extent. You want to be off of centralization. You want to hold your own funds. Well, that comes with the risks, and the luxuries are not there when it comes to general banking, right? So I just day to day, at least I'm in Canada, I feel quite safe going to the bank. I feel safe with my investments with them. I feel that I can always pull my money out. And even if I do get hacked, I call the company. I say, look, somebody took my credit card number. I was doing, but on a bad website, and usually they'll refund you, right? That's the downside of crypto, at least today, is without this centralization, without the regulation, you don't have anybody to call on to give you that trust and security. I don't know if that's ever going to get broken down. I guess the question is the onus on the user, obviously, and always teaching the user to be one step ahead of the attackers, just this kind of consistent arms race? Or is at some point a protocol or a game or a platform going to take it on themselves and try to solve for this, right? It's hard to tell. I don't know if you have any thoughts on how this is going to get fixed, or maybe it's just going to be a consistent issue. I just feel like that's the barrier to the blockchain technology, is just it's risky. And people, at least in this kind of economic time, are kind of shying away from risk to some extent, right? The rates are going up, the economy's in turmoil, people aren't sure what the future is going to hold. I mean, I guess, I'm young enough that it's maybe my first big financial crisis. I didn't really live through the 2008s, but, there's cycles of this stuff, but I don't think it's ever been so digital and so decentralized in terms of what we have in front of us today. So I don't know. It's a big question, obviously, Tabasco, but any thoughts on, where the onus is going to lie in the future to help, make this more safe for people?
I think this is a really good question because this will kind of bring us full circle almost. But I think I want to circle this back to accessibility and onboarding average people. When you say, the responsibility for not getting hacked is on the user, it doesn't make much sense, because if you want normal people to onboard and you want the mainstream to onboard into Web3, you can't give them a wallet and then say, you're responsible. You need to be aware of every hack. You need to be super safe. You need to go through all these safety measures. I mean, it's just a lot. And people aren't used to that, right? Like Web2 has so many safety nets for what you do. And it's hard to download a virus, something like that. Like there's practices and protections and antiviruses and stuff like that. So if you ask normal people to go into Web3 and then you say, just don't get hacked and figure it out, it's a tough thing to sell to people. So I think having security be a priority for organizations, like you said, whether it's a game or whether it's a platform or whether it's a protocol, them taking security at utmost priority, and while it's creating secure safety nets and these different applications, ensuring that the least chance possible for an individual to have their funds stolen, is really, really important to selling Web3 as a concept and as a technology to the mainstream masses. Because, if these hacks keep occurring, and even if you say, oh, it's the fault of whoever put their money into this, that they got hacked or that they got their funds stolen, then that's just not a very attractive proposition for most people.
Yeah, I hear you. And I mean, I try to have these conversations. I'm not sure what kind of friend group you have, Tabasco, even myself, like I said, in my little community where I live, it's not very crypto focused. There are some really smart people. And I'm not saying that most of the masses aren't thinking about it, but as soon as I open my mouth and I say that I work in crypto, people, oh, and sigh, and oh my gosh, is your job in line? And obviously it's interesting conversations, and it'd be cool to see how some of the rest of the folks on our team kind of have these interactions. It obviously depends how social are you in your friend groups and your age, but at least in my age category, I have, some groups that are much younger in terms of some of the neighbors that I speak to. They're all quite excited, they're interested, they're not sure where to start. So I think it starts from, like, let's say like 10, 13 year olds onwards. They're already thinking about gaming and blockchain and web3 and what this means. They're not quite sure what the definition of it is. They didn't really live through, I guess, even yourself, Tabasco, I hate to call you out on the age, but I've lived through this revolution of digital and online banking. I barely saw that change. Some of my grandparents, right, lived through the bricks and mortar all the way to like a credit card and digital money. So we're all going through these different cycles. But I totally agree with you. Like right now, the barrier to entry is just so high and the risk is so high unless, the economy changes and people have a lot more disposable income. Until this security concept is fixed, I feel like we're going to be at this almost standstill. And it doesn't really matter the quality of the game. I mean, unless something absolutely outrageous is going to just draw so many people in and it's going to by force essentially take over, I still feel we're going to have these same issues in terms of security and onboarding. And I think, for example, we look at Shrapnel, right? I haven't looked at much of their demos. And, the game looks great, but if every two steps you got to approve a transaction, and if every reload of a weapon you've got to approve an NFT purchase or something, it's going to get a little clunky. So I don't know if you've thought or seen what actually happens in practice with some of these new games coming out. Have they thought about this? Do you think we're still going to have the same issues as in the past?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to find a tweet now, real quick. But I think the point here that we need to drive home is that, issues like this. Let me see. Can I pin this to the space? I don't know. It's not letting me. But the issues that we're having right now, and this lack of security, and well, if we want to have people play Web3 games, like there's like not enough security to, like you said, like make people feel safe doing so, and like the issue of like every time, like you said, like every time you reload a weapon, like are you approving or signing a contract? And it's like this clunkiness and like these like various issues that come with Web3. I just see them as growing pains. I think that any new technology and new industry has these issues. The security issue is something that will be solved eventually. The issue of like seamless utilization of Web3 with wallets will be solved eventually. What I was trying to pin to the space is an article written by the Daily Mail in 2000, the year 2000. The headline of this article was "The internet may just be a passing fad as millions give up on it." So there actually was early internet. There was a very similar sentiment to Web3 that there is now, because it was complicated and there was risks and there was lots of scams everywhere and it was kind of scary and people didn't understand it, which sounds pretty familiar to the kind of what the motions that we're going through right now, right? There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of competition. Everybody's trying to get in on it and everybody's skeptical of it. But if you give it, Web3's only been around for 13 years, right, since Bitcoin's inception. So if you give it another, I think we're getting to the point where people are really starting to take into account mainstream interests and building applications around those interests. So I think as we go into the next 5 years, maybe even 10 years, um, priority on solving these fundamental issues, whether it be security or whether it be ease of interaction, or but getting funds into Web3 is another issue, or like anything, right? All these various issues, I think these will be prioritized and hopefully solved over the next few years. But right now, there's not a huge solution. But like you said, these are fundamental and extremely important things that do need to be solved before we can expect, like you said, like your average 20-year-old or even 15-year-old to willingly go into Web3 as a user.
Yeah, totally. No, you make a lot of sense. And I mean, we sit on a lot of spaces I see out there, and I'm doing the same. I'm trying to get educated, trying to listen to the vibe of the community. And every one of these sessions, you get somebody that says, "Look, I'm a rookie. You guys are talking seed phrases. You're talking hardware wallets. You're talking smart contracts, signatures, RPCs, like just break this thing down and simplify it for me. I mean, I still think we're waiting for that magic solution that really does break it down and make it simple. I think insurance would be a cool component. I come from the custody space, and like insured funds was always a nice sentiment. It always made me feel a bit more confidence inspiring, if that makes sense. The problem with insurance is there's so many different clauses and guidelines that they can say, sorry, this was your fault, this was user error. So I don't think we're there just yet with regards to like general purpose user insurance. Federally, right, we'll see how I guess it's the regulation was going to roll out for stablecoins, at least in the US this year. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, I'm not saying we're at a standstill. I just feel that, there is a lot of risk. A lot of people take a hit. Hopefully they learn and they kind of adapt. I mean, some of the best practices I guess we could close on is just obviously never sharing your seed phrase. Be very cautious about what you're signing. Take the extra 10 seconds. I know even myself, when I do transactions, I get kind of excited and jittery and just want to click and get this thing done. And even sometimes I bypass some basic security steps, right? So just making sure that you're doing a personal hygiene check every few weeks. You're making sure that, let's say, your loved ones know how to access your funds. I mean, I'm in a personal situation where I don't think my wife could actually get access to any of my funds, which is a shame to say, but that's a personal responsibility. Estate planning, management of that. As you have these boomers that maybe bought Bitcoin in 2013, they're sitting on a few $100,000, and now they're passing away. And how do they translate that to the estate and the will and accounting and taxation? So it's just so cool to be part of the space, Tabasco. And thanks for joining me here and for the team. But obviously there's so many opportunities for improvement, which I think gives people that are building in this space so much opportunity for building projects that are going to create value. It is a big challenge, especially with the multi-chain ecosystem and kind of the segmentation that's out there. We see in the space that some of those walls are going to get broken down. Multi-chain, omni-chain operability or interoperability is going to get better. I feel like new wallet technology coming out this year is going to try to be better through like social recovery wallets, multi-sig in terms of setting up that portion of your security. And even just listening into Ledger. I subscribe to Ledger on their support channel. They do spaces every few weeks. I'm now starting to get more involved on security space. There's stuff like Wallet Guard, I think Token Proof, a few different things if you're attending events with your NFTs. So there's lots of tools out there, and I feel like this new economy of security tools is going to boom. So just keep that in mind, right? From our perspective, try to be as safe as you can. It's hard to get the right education, so try to trust no one. Do your own research, as frustrating as that is to have. And that's my last kind of plug there is just try to do an audit on yourself every few weeks. Make sure that you're up to speed. Delete any unused wallets that you don't need anymore. Clean up your act a little bit in terms of password and key management. And let's just try to save people some money here by doing it. Tabasco, any thoughts before we close off?
Yeah, I think we've been talking, a big part of the space has been about, like Web3 gaming and how it'll onboard people and like the challenges with onboarding people and so on. And I say this all the time and I say this constantly. People are probably tired of me saying it, but developers right now are focused on innovating and solving these problems. Like, for example, we have Villain in here, or previously was known as Harmony Villain, who works on the MTopSwap project, which is based around making trading on DEXs easier and more accessible for people and so on. So developers in almost every project, and like I said, I wrote a thread about this the other day, but virtually every developer in the space right now has a singular goal in mind, and that is making the space suitable for mainstream users, making gaming suitable for mainstream users, and making things multi-chain and so on. So, I think all these developers are working on it. And if you're not working on it and you want to work on it and you want to work towards making Web3 mainstream and making it a real, utilizable and practical technology, then what I say constantly is that go and start learning programming and start building your idea. Because right now I think 2023 is the year to support the Web3 ecosystem and start utilizing it and building your ideas. So if you have an idea, then go build it, because like what I said on my last thread is that the developers of today are innovating and really pushing the space forward, and will be the same developers that see the most success in the next few years.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Tabasco, you're always very inspiring for anybody. Tabasco is in his teenage years. He's already got a project under his belt. He's working full time with Chainstack while being homeschooled. So, it can be done. You can learn, you can build. Age is not a barrier. And it's just always a pleasure to have you on the team and working with us and just, continuing to push this thing forward. So maybe we close off here. Would love to have anybody in the crowd. If you have any questions, comments, here's the chance, last 5-10 minutes here. And just appreciate you sitting in with us. Hopefully we catch you again on next week's session. Shameless plug at chainstack.com. We are Web3 and infrastructure providers for blockchain technologies. Feel free to give us a shot. We have free developer tiers for everybody, all the way through to core enterprise accounts. We support some of the biggest projects in the world internationally, so feel free to give us a check out. We've got Twitter, we've got Discord, Telegram, and feel free to follow any of us in the chat here. Everybody's very friendly. We're open to conversations and just love to help. So thank you very much, everybody.